of after his disappearance, and I stand before you filled with spirit that refuses to bring down. I will not stop fighting until I see my husband alive.
So that was Kilmar Garcia's wife, and I want to guys give you an update on what's going on with this story. A senator from Maryland actually went down to go get him and see if we can get him released right away. So let's have a look at what's going on with that.
I just landed at the airport in San Salvador a little while ago. I'm now en route into the city, looking forward to meeting with.
So that's Senator Holland, I believe, from Maryland.
The team from the American Embassy. And I do want to thank our Foreign Service officers and the whole team at this embassy and embassies around the world for all the good work they do on behalf of our country. I'm proud to co-chair the bipartisan Foreign Service Caucus that stands up for the men and women who are serving our country overseas and at home in the State Department. After that, I hope to meet with some high-level government officials from El Salvador. As I've said before, the goal of my visit is to talk to people here about the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I told his wife and his family I would do everything possible to bring him home, and we're going to keep working at this until we're successful. I also hope to have the chance to meet with him, but we'll have a better idea of.
So he's down there now in El Salvador, and for those of you who've never had to ask a representative or senator for help, the good ones they help you, especially in times of need. We'll see what develops from this. I also want to show you what Bondi is saying. So this is the Attorney General. She's on Fox News. It's a very different tone, but I just want you to see two different sides of this.
But this victim was even braver because she was married to one of the top MS-13 members who was illegally in our country and a terrorist. So now
Can you explain?
He gets.
Oh, go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry,
Sean.
Pam. Finish. No. You finish.
So, Sean, he, under Donald Trump's incredible plan to get these alien enemies, these terrorists, out of our country, he is deported. He is deported back to where he came from, El Salvador. He is sitting in a prison, and every American should be thanking President Trump tonight, and every liberal journalist who has called him a Maryland man and saying he was rightfully in this country should be apologizing tonight to President Trump.
So that's Pam Bondi. Obviously, she has a very different point of view. I just let it speak for itself. I want to point out a couple differences, too, between these people. This is Pam Bondi's qualifications. She's been divorced a couple of times. Undergrad, Florida. She has a law degree from Stetson, which is kind of a middle-tier university for law. This is the senator from Maryland talking, and I just want to point this stuff out because you'll notice a very different style, the way that they speak, the words that they use, and whether or not they care about people, and also getting the law right.
So I asked the vice president if Abrego Garcia has not committed a crime, and the U.S. courts have found that he was illegally taken from the United States, and the government of El Salvador has no evidence that he was part of MS-13. Why is El Salvador continuing to hold him in CCOT? And his answer was that the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, to keep him at CCOT.
So, that's the answer? So the U.S. government says they mistakenly sent this guy down here. Senator Wright from Maryland goes and checks on Garcia. Why are you holding him, El Salvador? El Salvador says, well, Trump is paying us. I mean, that's the answer. It's pretty ridiculous. I mean, to me, this is a cut and dry, bring the guy back, have him face trial, right? Tell it to a judge kind of thing. Have Pam Bondi go tell the judge, show us your evidence. Let's see a little bit more.
And I pointed out that neither the government of El Salvador nor the Trump administration has presented evidence to support the claim that he's committed any kind of criminal acts. And so why not release Abrego Garcia?
So he's saying there's no evidence. El Salvador's doing it for the money. I mean, that's kind of what we're going on here. And you could argue the White House is doing it for, PR. This is Levitt, what she has to say.
If he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again. Nothing will change the fact that Abrego Garcia will never be a Maryland father. He will never live in the United States of America again.
That's how Levitt talks. That's the White House spokesperson. She graduated from St. Anselm College. I actually have never heard of it, so I don't even know where it is, to be perfectly frank. She's 27 years old. I'm just bringing this up. And the person she married is actually 32 years older than her. That's who these people are. So, I mean, 32 age gap is pretty nuts if you ask me, but each to their own. It's a free country. This is, and guys, I'm showing you this stuff because I just wanted to show you who these people are. This is more of a Senator Holland. I don't think he was able to see Garcia, but he gives an update here.
I've had back-to-back meetings here in El Salvador with our team from the American Embassy, with the Vice President of El Salvador, with human rights groups. And the entire purpose has been to bring Abrego Garcia home, because U.S. courts have determined that he was illegally abducted from the United States and now finds himself in the most notorious prison in El Salvador. The Supreme Court, 9-0, has told the Trump administration they must facilitate his return home.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, the Supreme Court's like, bring him back, facilitate it. Then we just had a recent judge also say, tell us what you're doing, give us an update. What are you doing to bring him back? What are you, not doing to bring him back? I think this is going to be a massive scandal. There's likely already a cover-up involved. And is Garcia still alive? That's another key question. I don't know. I don't, and because he was unable to meet him, unfortunately, Senator Holland wasn't. He'll talk some more about it, though.
They've refused to do it. So I called upon the government of El Salvador to do it unless they can provide evidence that he's been involved in MS-13. They said they had no evidence.
So he's saying, according to him, right? And I always want to make this clear whenever we talk this stuff, is like, according to who, where's the evidence? But so at least according to Senator Holland, said, I went to El Salvador. El Salvador says we have no evidence. So it's like, why don't you just release this guy? I mean, right now Trump is just arresting people with no evidence. That's a real problem. And what is he being charged with? And all Bondi and Levitt will say, well, he was part of the gang. That's all they keep saying.
So this is not about MS-13. I know President.
Right. So then again, Bondi and Levitt are saying this is about MS-13, and then Holland saying, well, no, this isn't about MS-13.
Trump wants to make this about gang violence. I have been fighting MS-13 probably longer than Donald Trump even knew about MS-13.
And I asked you guys in the prior video on this topic, in your neck of the woods in the USA, have you heard of any of these gangs or anything like that? I've mentioned before, I lived in USA, I lived in LA. I don't remember hearing anything about this stuff. Other people who also live in Southern California haven't heard. I've heard people in the community say, they live in Arizona. And I mentioned this because, they're along the border. They haven't heard of this. There was a community member that did say there was some gang stuff in Colorado, and that it was kind of isolated. Like, there were certainly people there, but wasn't like massive, maybe 17 members, something like that. Another member of our community said that there is some stuff going like Maryland, Northern Virginia. That's what this center is. So he's saying, hey, he's been fighting us before. But that's the issue here, though, is what are we charging Garcia with? They keep claiming he's part of the gang, because let's just play that out. Let's say, for example, he is part of the gang. This, for example. But is that automatically illegal? This, for example. Which I'll show you too in a minute here. Even that evidence is a bit weak from Bondi and the government. So, I mean, bring the guy home. I'll make it simple, but I just want you to hear different sides of this. Listen some more.
I care about every victim of crime. That's why we have a court system, to hold people accountable when they commit crimes, to make sure that they get the punishment they deserve. We also have a court system to make sure that people who have not committed crimes or not been convicted of crimes are not disappeared.
And essentially what we're talking about here is due process. I like to have these conversations with you because I think it's an important conversation. I know a lot of people in the community say, Chris, I have MAGA people in my life, and they're just like, oh well, they're guilty, and we should just throw them all away and stuff like that. And it's just like, is that the world we want to live in, where we're just gonna assume someone's guilty with no trial, right? No chance to defend themselves. We don't even see the evidence necessarily. We're just gonna assume people are guilty. That's why you go down there and just get them. Like, it's like, if you don't have any evidence, what are you guys doing? And even the government before admitted that it was a mistake. So I mean, this should be cut and dry, but that's why I'm a bit concerned. Like, where is Garcia? I think that's the key question.
Out of the United States and sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador, like Abrego Garcia. This is simply about letting him have his day in court. We use the courts to make sure that we don't convict people who are not guilty, and that we convict those who are.
And that's basic rule of law, right? I don't think that's too much to ask. I just want to bring this stuff up because sometimes people wonder, why do I bring up education? It matters, guys. It matters. You can see it in the way Bondi talks or Levitt talks. So by contrast, Christopher Von Hollen Jr., it says here, education, Swarthmore undergrad, which is very good, of course. Harvard, he's got a master's, that should be public policy, very good, of course. And then Georgetown law, which is obviously very good. So education alone doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do the right thing, but you take that as into consideration when you're talking about this kind of stuff. And this is sort of why you see things very, very different, right? So I don't want to ever imply that education alone is the only thing that a person needs, but I mean, even if we disagree on things, guys, I always take the time to go through everything and do due diligence and have honest discussions about this stuff. So, for example, this was the article that just came out just a few hours ago. New documents detail government's case that mistakenly deported man was a gang member. This is my understanding of it. If you want to read through it, this is the title, but this is my understanding. I can tell you exactly what it was. So it sounded like Garcia, I think it was back in 2019. I can check the date. He was wearing like a Chicago Bulls sweatshirt in front of a Home Depot, and he might have been hanging out with other gang people. Okay, so that's sort of the charges that they have against him. It says here, the Justice Department shared records not previously made public detailing how police officers in Maryland assessed Abrego Garcia was a member of the MS-13 gang during an arrest in 2019. So he was arrested, I guess. And they just kept, the government said he was a gang member because he's hanging out with other gang members, but Garcia denied it. It says here, police said he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie with rolls of money covering the eyes and ears, mouth of the presidents. And then because I guess the styling of said hoodie, they just assumed he was in the gang. The officer said such insignia indicating ver, oi, why, collar, see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil, indicative of the Hispanic gang culture. Officers said they consulted with a reliable, confidential source. So maybe they had an informant, I guess, advised that Abrego is the rank Chequa in the moniker Chele in the gang. Garcia was handed over to immigration authorities and wound his way through the legal process. Later in 2019, an immigration judge barred him from being sent to El Salvador. So that was when Garcia said, my dad's a police officer. I came to the USA because my life's in danger. And I mean, I'm telling you guys, I read through this stuff and I'm just like, so, I mean, it just comes across as the evidence they have against him is that he's hanging out with gang members at Home Depot looking for work. That's the basic idea of it. There was also something that just came out, which again, I want to just talk about everything. He had a possible domestic dispute with his wife, domestic violence. His wife, I think, filed something out. No, I'll just read it to you. It says, aside from the new documents, the Department of Homeland Security posted in social media earlier Wednesday that Abrego Garcia's wife had sought a temporary protective order against him in 2021. The case was ultimately dismissed. Abrego Garcia's wife, that's Jennifer, has been a strong vocal supporter of her husband and has fought for his return. So, and this was her statement. After surviving domestic violence in a previous relationship, I acted out of caution after a disagreement with Kilmar by seeking a civil protective order in case things escalated. Things did not escalate, and I decided not to follow through with civil court process. No one is perfect, and no marriage is perfect. That is not the justification for ICE's action of abducting him and deporting him to a country where he was supposed to be protected from deportation. So I wanted to go over this stuff because I think it's important to get some more details on these things. In my opinion, the government's case against Garcia is pretty weak. Even the time when they arrested him in 2019, there wasn't really any crime other than hanging out in front of Home Depot and looking for work. Now, I also want to be clear on this. Yes, because people will say, MAGA people say, well, he crossed the border illegally, right? That's a crime. I would agree. He broke the law. I would completely agree with that, right? When he crossed over illegally, so I think that would have been 10 years ago. I agree. I'm not disputing that. The issue becomes he's married to an American citizen. He's got American kids. Where is he in his immigration process of getting citizenship, right? I don't know. I don't know. I haven't read anything about that. I know it takes a long time. I also want to state this clear is think about it this way. The crime or the time should fit the crime is a good way to put it. So for example, if we can both agree that yes, crossing the border illegally 10 years ago was a crime, completely agree. But what would be an appropriate punishment for that, right? Is it a death sentence to El Salvador prison? Is that an appropriate punishment? I mean, just a legitimate question. Because the thing that I would, ask you, like say, for example, I would agree that getting a speeding ticket is a crime. Would you agree? I think we should both be able to agree on that. So what is an appropriate, fine someone $500, $1,000, whatever, and go about your way. You can, come up with some sort of penalty for something that someone did 10 years ago, right? And this is part of our system. My understanding is he hasn't done any crimes since he's been in the USA. That's just my understanding of it. If something else comes out, please let me know. But again, the thing seems weak. I don't, and I think this is where we have to be honest about this stuff. Is like I don't pretend that say Garcia is absolutely 100%, the most innocent person of all time. I just tell you what I see, right? And even his wife is like, I had a previous marriage that was not so great, so I took extra precautions on Kilmar in temporary restraining order, but ended up not escalating. That's according to her. And now, she wants her husband back, of course. And, regardless, and I get another example, just guys, get your mind thinking this way. Let's say you're caught with an illegal substance, something like that. What would be an appropriate sentence? Should you just give someone parole, maybe give someone 6 months, right? Are they a repeat offender? These kind of things. But should you give them 40 years or something like that? Because Bondi, she'd be like, well, if you attack the White House or attack whatever building, like Congress, for example, on January 6th, and if Trump pardons you, nothing, right? You can hurt police officer, nothing. But if you attack a Tesla, we're going for 40 years. So I'm being sarcastic here, but I just want to understand when we talk about this issue, one is, I think this current case that the government has against him, they're going with guilt by association is what it sounds like to me is their case. So that's why they like to, and I've seen it from Fox, they'll say Garcia is part of the gang. Okay, so that's the allegation. And then they'll go on and talk about other gang members, not Garcia, and crimes that they have done, right? It's really a misdirection and misleading. So it's kind of like saying, this person was hanging out and they live near, a particular group of bad people, right? And we saw him once with those bad people. We took a picture, see he's with the bad people, and like, yeah, that's all correct. And then they'll just go on and on and on about all the bad crimes that the bad people did, but there's still no direct charge to say what Garcia did. And so I think there's going to be a lot of people, I don't know the exact number that they took to El Salvador that may fit in that category where they, looked the wrong way, dressed the wrong way, had the wrong tattoo, and they just, accused said people of, being in the gang. And also want to make this really clear. I like the way Holman said it as well. Hey, if there's people who are doing crime that are, obviously punishable or something like that, presented in court, tell it to a judge. Everyone deserves a day in court, right? If someone's guilty, you convict them. If someone's not guilty, you let them walk. That's our justice system. And then when you develop the penalty, make sure it's fair. So I know we talk extensively about this, but I just want you guys to think this stuff through of why it's important to have due process and how this is a fundamental part of our system. So I do appreciate your time. I hope Kilmar can come home safely, and we'll talk about when there's updates on this. And I'll catch you on the next video.